So now we are moving forward in our Lamborghini timeline, and we've moved basically to 1990. So the Countach had been around almost 2 decades. It was from, I think, 71 to virtually till 89. And by that time, the Countach was seriously dated, so the time was ripe for replacement. And this car actually arrived at quite a complicated time for Lamborghini as a company. And in fact, during the lifespan of this car, Lamborghini went through 4 owners. So originally, when the car was being developed and proposed originally, it was the Mimram family that owned Lamborghini. Then it went to the Chrysler company, Chrysler Motors. Then it was the Soeharto family from Indonesia. And finally, Audi, which, of course, still owns the company to this day. So yeah, I think this car sort of carried over much of the same fundamentals as the Countach. So you had the longitudinal V12 sitting behind the cabin, 6 liters in this case, because this car is actually the very last of the Diablos. It's the 6-liter SE. So in this form, it put out, I think, about 550 horsepower. It was good for about 325 kilometers an hour. So seriously quick. It's a heavy car as well. So this car sort of pioneered a few firsts. So the Diablo was the first Lamborghini with all-wheel drive. VT was the acronym. I think it stood for viscous traction. So the VT was introduced sort of midway through the car's lifespan. I think about 20% of torque would be sent to the front wheel, so it gives it a more planted feel on the road. And you can tell, if we can sort of pan out and get an idea of the dimensions of the car, we'll just let this Audi go past as well. So it's a much bigger car than the Countach, where the Countach was about 4.14 meters long. This is a good 300 millimeters longer. So you can tell it's got like a very long rear end. So that it's even more pronounced that it has a cab forward design with a very long rear end. And you have these sort of huge air intakes there. And originally this car was also designed by Marcello Gandini, but then it evolved during the course of its lifespan. So this being the last of the series, it was reworked by Luke Donkerwolk, who was the head of Lamborghini's design division. So it was updated in his hands, and yeah, I think it's got some very distinctive proportions. I think it stands quite clearly apart from what came before it and also what came after it. So yeah, I think from the Countach to this was quite a step, even though it sort of carries over that very angular theme, the scissor doors. I quite like the way these dual exhausts really sort of thrust out like it's sort of very fighter plane-esque. And what else? I don't know what this particular gold is called, but I think it just really pops on this particular car. So yeah, I think and some fairly substantial wheel and tire package. It's 335 millimeter rubber on 18-inch rims, which for that era, that was probably the biggest tire you could get in its day. So I propose that we jump in and we go for a drive. And yeah, getting into this car also is a bit of a limbo exercise. Fortunately, I'm not hugely, but it's a lot easier than the Countach, I have to say, to get into, and the visibility is better and you're not quite so hemmed in. So let's hit the road. Okay, so here we are in the next installment of our Lamborghini V12 lineage. This is the Diablo, and this particular car is a 6.0 GT, so it's the last of the series. And yeah, straight away jumping into this car, you can feel it's an altogether more modern car than the Countach. Still pretty tight in here with the low roof line, but visibility is much better. I don't have that A-pillar right in my line of sight, bigger windows, and it just feels sort of more comfortable and cosseting inside. And also in terms of the driving dynamics, it's still quick. How beautiful does that V12 sound? So yes, loads of power, but very sort of manageable. And I'm not sure if this car has power steering. Doesn't feel like it. There's still steering effort's pretty high. Or if there is assistance, there's not much of it. And I have to say it feels pretty tight. Like this car is from the early 90s, but it gets along pretty well. And it feels much better tied down than the Miura and the Countach. So you can tell that a couple of decades have elapsed between those cars and this one. So, also it's sort of like a bridge between the old Lamborghinis and then the newer ones, because after this we'll be driving the Murcielago next. And you can already see this was kind of like a bridge between the Countach and the Murcielago. So the pedal box is again pretty small, so you not really great for people with big feet. And this gear change also takes a pretty firm hand to guide that thing home. But once you master it, it's a pretty satisfying car to drive.